TopMedTalk.
Well, hello and welcome to TopMedTalk. I'm Desiree, Chappell, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Professor Monty Mythen. Hello, Monty.
Desiree, as always, it is great to be here.
It is. Have you recovered from the ASA yet, the American Society of Anesthesiologists?
I have. Somewhere in between, I picked up a little virus that isn't COVID that I'm just recovering from. They've been a little bit snuffly and stuff, but I'm fine.
Well, I was kind of referring to the fact that we did 27 podcasts in 2.5 days.
Well, to be more accurate, you did 27 podcasts in those couple of days and everyone else tried to help. So you did an amazing job. Well done. Tens of thousands of downloads since, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. Well, Monty, we were so bummed out because during the meeting, we were really planning on having a great conversation about a new book that is coming out on December 13th. It's called the Perioperative Quality Improvement. We were going to sit down with the co-editors to talk, but unfortunately it didn't happen. So we are pleased to say that we had the opportunity now. We gathered them all to have this conversation, and we're going to talk about the book. So it is my great pleasure to introduce our guests and friends of the TopMedTalk family for a long time. We have Professor Peden, who is Adjunct Professor of Clinical Anesthesiology at Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania and Adjunct Professor of Clinical Anesthesiology at Keck Medical School at the University of Southern California. Carol, it's wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Desiree. Monty, great to see you. And I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the ASA, but it's a long story.
Best excuse I've heard for a long time. The best excuse I've heard for a long time. We won't go into it.
Those of you who are listening, I broke my ankle in New Orleans on a Saturday party night, but let's not go.
So you made it to the ASA, but you just didn't show up at the booth.
But I was so disappointed not to be able to talk with you about the book and have Lee there. But the good news is we've got Mike Engelsbe here tonight with us as well.
That's right. So we were actually able to sit down with Professor Emeritus Lee Fleisher. Lee, it was great to sit down with you there, but I'm so glad you could take the time out of your very busy schedule to sit down with us to talk about the book.
It's a pleasure. And I will only be called Mike by my residents for tomorrow, so I'll make sure I'm prepared for our surgical colleagues.
That's right. And our last guest that's going to be talking, one of the co-editors of the book, is Professor Michael Engelsbe, Professor of Surgery at the University of Michigan. And he actually has a pretty tight schedule tonight, so we're excited to get him. I think you're going in a transplant, right, Mike?
Kidney transplant, yes. Anesthesia delays so I'm here till they're done. So
well, always blame anesthesia. It works every time. Well, that's great, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this. We are super excited about it. Monty and I were talking about the book. We were able to actually see one of the advanced copies. So Carol, just walk us through what this new book is, what it's about. Give us a little bit more information on it.
Well, as you know, I've been working in quality improvement and in perioperative medicine for a long time now. And I thought it was important to have a very practical book that was a resource for everybody that works in this field, anesthesiologists, surgeons, nurses, any kind of perioperative practitioner, to lay out, number one, why we need to improve in this arena, but then to give people practical tools and techniques that they could work with. And if you look at the book, Tom Lee from Harvard wrote the foreword, and he said, this is not a book about the current evidence. This is a book about how you keep making things better in perioperative care. So, brought together a lot of friends and colleagues and experts, really the best experts in the world, to write this book. And I'm very happy with the way it's turned out.
Carol, a number of us on the call were privileged to write in the book. Obviously, they're the people that have more major contributions. Myself and Desiree did. Interesting format. Can you touch on that for a second?
I wanted the chapters to be really short. I think in the world, of texts and short bites of information, nobody wants to read enormously long chapters. And I also thought of the idea that this is something just like Mike is now, when you're waiting for a case in the OR or in the coffee room, you can grab this book and think, I want to learn about this in 10 minutes. So there's a slight variation in chapter length. There are a few longer chapters, but really the aim was about 1,500 to 2,000 words, lots and lots of diagrams, things that you could pick up, you could adapt for your environment or your department, and then, a short number of very key references. So it's supposed to inspire people that if they're really interested in a particular area, they could go and easily find other resources.
Lee, I was wanting to hear from you. What are some of the things that you find most exciting about the book? And as Carol was saying, some of those things that we wouldn't necessarily see in other texts about this topic.
No, As you know, and many of the people out there know, I did take this other job over the last couple of years and as Chief Medical Officer for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We've done a lot of analysis of what happened during the public health emergency, during the pandemic. And the biggest issue is not the lack of knowledge, although in the beginning it was the inability to implement. And, some of us, fancy University of Michigan and other institutions, there's lots of resources to teach us that. But there are so many places where that critical mass of how to implement things is not there. And you saw that nursing homes, which I worried about, but also smaller hospitals, people who are further out from your training. The best way to stay up to date is actually have trainees because they always ask you the question. So for me, the exciting part of this book is a lot of what Carol's taught me over the years, which is how to think about making it work at your place. So those vignettes, that idea of not being too didactic, or too much based on this is the evidence and you got to do it this way, but this is how to apply it. That was what was exciting. And I think, Carol, all your years at IHI and all the stuff you've done prior to the last couple of years really has led up to teaching us the importance of that.
What I thought was interesting, we'll talk about this in just a second, the diverse array of authors. And you're right on, Lee, about Carol kind of teaching us that there's a way that people have done things in the ivory tower, but how do you actually get things done in those sites that may not be those big academic settings? To that point, actually, Mike, I'd love to bring you into the conversation and talk about, I know you're at the University of Michigan. Lee's giving you plenty of flack about that. But as a non-anesthesia provider, what is the value of the book to you?
I think depending on where you are, the perioperative workflow, is dominated by either surgeons, anesthesiologists, CRNAs, nurse practitioners. PAs are a big part of ours at the University of Michigan. So I think one cool thing about the book is that all of those types of people contributed their perspective and kind of how they do it. So there is nice framework chapters on this is how you think about fixing problems, but there's also this is how we fixed our ward. And from all those diverse perspectives, and not across the world too. So it's not just kind of this is how you fix perioperative kind of workflow in an obstetrics ward in the UK. There are examples from all around the world. So, and then I'll just add more. It's good to have young people, as Lee said, some really kind of innovative chapters, great chapter on perioperative quality and health equity, perioperative quality and the environmental impact of perioperative care, things like that, which I think for me, at least, they were quite innovative and interesting to read. I certainly learned a lot.
Desiree, can I usurp and actually go back to Monty? Because, when Carol came to me and her idea, and we said, we've got to have a surgeon. I think we both said it, correct? And it was easy to choose Mike, but Monty, perioperative medicine. We think it would have been a mistake to not have that perspective. I'm curious. Your thoughts?
I'm a long-term convert to the idea of the fact that it's a team game. We're all involved. The patient's at the center of it. And, well done for bringing out this type of book. Myself and others on the call have been involved in other types of books, traditional heavy tomes, which they're not going to get picked up in the coffee room and read quickly. So they're good reads. Don't we undermine them? But I think it's a fantastic idea. So I encourage everyone to get access to it.
Well, Carol, when we talk about perioperative medicine, one of the first things we say is that it's a multidisciplinary team coming together to make all of that happen. Walk us through quickly some of the different types of authors that you had for these chapters, because it's people from all walks of life, really.
As we've already said, it's from around the world. So probably the majority of the chapters are at the US, but there's a very big UK contribution, also Australia and New Zealand. So it's really not designed to be directed at one type of healthcare delivery, but the lessons are universally applicable. And again, we've got everybody from residents to very, very senior professors, some of whom we have
easy
and real world leaders in healthcare, again, some of whom we have on this call, but and people that have pushed the boundaries in other aspects of healthcare. So for example, like Tom Lee with his patient experience work. So I suppose if you ask me what's lacking, I suppose we should have got the voice of the patient more strongly, but that's for the next edition. We'll definitely include that. But we definitely did think about, we've got shared decision making. We've got those aspects which have become more important to include.
Yeah. What problem do you hope that future generations of, all these different types of providers and clinicians, anesthesiologists, surgeons, nurses, all these perioperative providers will be able to solve with this book?
Where to start? That was the idea, where the first part of the book sets the problem, sets the background, but then the middle part gives you the tools and techniques. And then the section that Mike edited is some really good, amazing examples of how we applied this in our area. So I think providing people with tools and techniques that they can use to go away and start this work, and also understand some of the challenges of it as well.
Okay, so I'm going to do round robin as we close here. We're going to talk about your favorite chapter. So, Carol, I'll start with you. What should we not miss if we read this book?
I really like the ones on the social aspects of change, because I think that's really, really important. There's one from Graham Martin at the University of Cambridge on, the social context, which is a more academic approach. And then we go all the way over to Hawaii with Della Lynn talking about energizing the group to change and creating urgency for change. So I think those are so important when you're actually trying to do this. And it's perhaps a little bit different to what you might find in a standard text.
Mike, how about you?
Yeah, I'm a softie for the young people. So there is a chapter on, I think I mentioned it, but just kind of the environmental impact of perioperative care. We're like the number one trash producer in healthcare and volatile chemicals and things like that. So as a young person, a young woman who's a resident at the University of Colorado, surgical resident, and just kind of telling that story, which is something I'd never really thought of or heard before. It's very humbling. And I think it's something that more and more we'll have to be dealing with within the context of perioperative quality. So that was a favorite of mine.
And then Lee, how about you?
The equity work. I mean, it's really that tangent. Without equity, there is no quality. So we really need to think about it. So I thought that was great to include on top of, and I agree with Carol, that the stuff about leadership and change management, we thought a lot about that as we were thinking through the table of contents. That's critical to get anywhere.
Yeah, it does bring those topics that are not necessarily ones that when we're in the trenches trying to get things done that we think about or talk about. And so bringing those up to the forefront gets people engaged. It gets them thinking outside the box and how do we get these things done? So I think that was great. Of course, my favorite chapter was the one on CRNAs and perioperative medicine. I'm just a little biased. Monty, how about you?
Only because I was looking at it earlier today, run charts, believe it or not. The power of run charts. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Monty, you're definitely a nerd. You are a nerd.
Yeah, well, trust me.
Yeah, and we probably have the world experts, or certainly the best well-known people in the world for teaching that. Bob Lloyd and Gareth Parry on the run charts and the SPC charts.
Yeah,
and
should have gone for a run.
Amazing examples from the University of Seattle chapter and the Michigan chapters on putting them into practice and showing change.
Yeah. I'm trying my bad joke, Desiree. I should have gone for a run this morning, but instead I read about run charts. It's an alternative.
Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show to talk to us about this new book, Perioperative Quality Improvement. Carol, where can we pick this up? I know that, I can't wait to give it away for Christmas to all my friends and colleagues. No joke. Actually, I am going to give that to my colleagues. Where can we pick it up?
It's on Amazon. It's also on the Elsevier website, but I guess most of you may more likely go to Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anything else in parting what you want to talk about? I know, Carol, I wanted you to reiterate the fact that this is a real how-to book. It gives us, there's all kinds of figures. It's not just a very, very dense text. There's lots of really engaging aspects to it.
Yeah, I think that's why when I actually saw it in print, I was so happy because it was my vision and it looked really appealing because of all the imagery and the charts. Yeah.
And Lee, you've been doing this for a little while too. I know you made, significant strides in perioperative medicine and care at UPenn. What are you, really looking forward to seeing where this book goes?
Just being adopted, but not staying in anesthesia.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, what would be great is if this was, available. And even Elsevier and a lot of these books are online. People aren't, we like it when they buy the books, but we also like when they access it. So what I think would be great, and this gets back to Carol, somebody's sitting there. We won't say where they're sitting, waiting for their next case. and like checking on this. That's been the fun of some of the other books I've done, is that 5 minutes before, and they do something different because of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Mike, how about you? Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the ultimate compliment to the anesthesia delay. No, I mean, I think
I can't wait to use that excuse. I'm sorry, I was reading my book.
I mean, we got 5 minutes, so we're all leaders in our systems, and we have top of mind problems on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's something you can pull off the shelf and say, "Oh yeah, this is my problem of the day or the week." And I guess another add-in would be adoption outside of just anesthesia and surgery, because I think we, as kind of perioperative providers, are so used to thinking this way, and continuous improvement and efficiency, and in other work that I do outside of those spaces, that culturally it's just much harder. They're not used to the tools. So that's probably maybe our next challenge for Carol and Lee, is to try to help us push this out of the perioperative space into kind of other chronic disease management, among other things. So, but yeah, I'm proud to be part of it. Carol, I'm really grateful for your vision on this and for the partnership.
Oh, thank you. It's been great fun. I'm glad it's done though, and I'm glad it's going out to the world.
But Carol, the one last thing for you is, I think Mike is right. There are a lot of chapters that are not just about perioperative care.
Yeah, I would have to add that the final chapter, of course, was the CEO perspective. So maybe we need to take it more to the CEOs and say, this is what you have to be thinking about.
I'm adding it to my gift list.
The CEO chapter was submitted about 2 hours after it was requested. So I don't know how that happened, but that was pretty amazing.
Was that the fastest submission of all?
It was by far the fastest, perfectly written. I heard a rumor there's potentially some professional writer behind the scenes there, but I'm not sure. So,
oh my gosh. Well, whatever. I think the inclusion of it and having that, the ghostwriter or not, it's all good. Guys, congratulations to you on this, the feat of this. I know it was a big undertaking to bring all of this together. How many authors, Carol, were there on there?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was looking at that. There's a lot. I mean, I think it speaks to the fact that we had a lot of short chapters, and all disciplines, all ages, and all around the world. So,
yeah. Well, congratulations to you guys. Thank you so much as leaders in the perioperative space for doing this. I think it's going to have a huge impact on all of us as frontline clinicians and those leading the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. And thanks for listening to TopMedTalk. Oh, Monty, anything else? Did I miss anything?
No, I was just going to say goodbye. Thanks for everyone for the wonderful book and for the time to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And thanks for listening to TopMedTalk. You can always find us on your favorite social media platform, LinkedIn, Twitter. We are there. Let us know what you think of the podcast. Be sure to follow us. We are kind of getting into the YouTube world. Check us out there. You're actually going to be able to watch the video probably in a couple weeks from hearing this, and subscribe to our channel there. Thank you, everyone, for all the support throughout this last year. December 13th, it's dropping Perioperative Quality Improvement. Cheers, everybody. Thank you.